we bring in NHL Network insider Elliotte Friedman from his closet. Elliotte, nice of you to take a few minutes. Let me ask you about this news. I mean, I certainly woke up to it and I was like, wow. I mean, that's not something that I expected. What was your reaction?
I had the same reaction, EJ. I was like, wow. Now, I'll be honest that there were some rumblings last week that potentially there could be a change in New York, but it's not like you can prove it. As Ken just said, we might find out the truth in 1,000 years, if ever. So you never really know for sure, and it's not like he's going to confirm it, and it's very difficult to get information out of there. So, last week I made a couple calls. I asked around. I said, "Have you guys heard any rumors that there could be a change in New York?" The answers were all no. It didn't really go anywhere, and you kind of forget about it. And then even though it happened this morning, I was shocked. I think the thing is, we all look at it and we say, if you look at what has happened since Barry Trotz took over the New York Islanders as head coach, I still think back to last year. Like, they took Tampa 1-0 to Game 7. You wouldn't think any chance a year later that we'd be in any kind of position like this. And to me, this story is what was not said. As you guys just alluded to, all Lou Lamoriello would say on his conference call this morning was, the players need a different voice. And, when Andrew Gross, one of the reporters, tried to get him to answer a bit more about that, Lamoriello basically said, look, I'm not going there. And, my working theory right now, and I stress it's a theory, that there were some conversations that were had in the exit interviews between, the end of the season and now that concerned the Islanders and Lamoriello, that maybe the relationship between Trotz and the players had run its course. And that's not to say that Barry Trotz is a bad guy or anything like that. I don't want anyone to go run with that narrative. But as you guys all know, sometimes the relationship between employer and employees goes, you reach a point where the message isn't getting through anymore. And I really wonder what happened in some of those exit interviews that may have convinced the Islanders of that.
All right. Again, now there's no real answer to this, but I'll ask you anyway. I mean, the Islanders, they have to fill this vacancy. I mean, I've heard Lane Lambert's name come up. He's a longtime assistant of Barry Trotz. He's been someone that has been, I think, looking for an opportunity to be a head coach. Are you hearing any scuttlebutt about anyone right now?
Well, Lane Lambert's name has obviously jumped to the forefront. I have a couple questions about that. And first of all, I'm with you, EJ. I think Lane Lambert deserves his opportunity. He's been close before, and I think it's time. There's a couple questions I have about this particular situation. And that is, would the players feel differently about any member of the coaching staff than they do about Trotz? Like, sometimes you kind of look at it like, okay, if the players and the head coach need a new voice, is the assistant coach enough to give that the new voice? I think sometimes it can be very difficult, and Washington was the most recent team that proved this, to move from an assistant coach on one team to a head coach on the same team. It's not easy because you go from the good cop to the bad cop, and sometimes the players don't buy into that. Now, I don't necessarily think Lou Lamoriello might care about that if Lambert's the right person, but it's one thing I do wonder about. Another name that I am curious about, and his name came up. His name came up on the weekend or last week when Gary Bettman was in Florida. I do wonder if the Islanders are going to be one of the teams that just at least asks about what's the future in the situation with Joel Quenneville, and says, what are we allowed to do here? What's the situation here? Bettman did say that at this point in time, no one is asked. Quenneville is not asked for a meeting. I do wonder if the Islanders are going to be one of the teams that at least kind of ask around, like, what's the process here? And I don't think they're going to be the only ones.
How about Barry Trotz now? I mean, this is a very successful coach. I mean, it'll be up to him what he wants to do. He might decide to step back, take a little break. He might want to just continue to get back into the mix. There are several openings. For me, I just talked about it earlier, I see the Philadelphia Flyers as in a similar place to where the Islanders were like 4 years ago, where they just don't defend very well and they need structure. I think he would be a wonderful fit there. What do you think for Barry Trotz in the future?
Well, I think that I'll tell you this. I think that there's going to be a ton of interest. Like, I've heard teams have kind of reached out already. And, technically the Islanders have him under contract for one more year. I'm sure they'll give permission to whoever wants to talk to him. I don't even think that would be an issue. But I've heard that there have been teams that have asked him what he's thinking already. I would expect he's going to decompress for a little bit of time and think about it. I think Philadelphia is definitely going to be one of those teams, EJ. I think you hit that one out of the ballpark. I could see the Winnipeg Jets throwing all the bags of money at Barry Trotz, who is a Manitoba guy. I could definitely see them being a team that's interested. You know, there's going to be teams that get knocked out early in the playoffs, or you know, some coaches, whether they retire or teams make changes. I guarantee you that there are teams who have coaches right now that are thinking about this and going, okay, do we make a change? But I would say this: I think that anywhere where there's an opening, he is a contender, and I do think teams like Philadelphia and Winnipeg are going to be, you know, really pursuing it. I think the other thing to me that is the question is, you know, is he at a point where he says, I only want to coach for X more years? Is he going to say to a team, I want a situation where it's a coaching job that maybe transitions into another role, like a front office role later? I don't know that that will be the case, but it's been mentioned to me that that could be the case.
Elliotte, before we let you go, we know there was some rumblings with Mark Scheifele when the Winnipeg Jets finished their season. They're obviously looking for a coach as well. You got anything new on the Scheifele circumstance there with the Jets?
Well, Mark Scheifele had his media conference, which certainly raised a lot of eyebrows. And then Kevin Cheveldayoff had his media conference, and he said he hadn't spoken to Scheifele yet. So well, that means extra work for me, unfortunately. I have to find out what gets said when they did speak. And I heard that Scheifele did not specifically ask for a trade. Now, I think I also heard that Connor Hellebuck didn't either. And that's some good news for the Jets. You know, I think one of the things that has to be figured out here is at least allows them a chance to breathe. Now they have to figure out what Pierre-Luc Dubois' future is. You know, is he willing? He's a restricted free agent with 2 years to unrestricted. Is he willing to commit to the franchise long term? And I think, you know, I think if you're Winnipeg and you're not sure that you can get him to do that, all of a sudden you're going from Scheifele and Dubois as your 1-2 centers to maybe having none of them as your 1-2 centers. And I don't think the Jets find that very appealing. So I think what this allows the Jets to do is breathe a little bit and say, okay, let's just figure out what our path is. And if Scheifele doesn't want to be traded, how do we make it work so that everybody is happier about the situations for here? I think at the very least, I don't expect a rebuild for the Jets. I think they're going to try to reload instead.
All right, Elliotte, thanks so much for all the info today. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you later.
Next time, I'll try to remember to comb my hair. I'm looking at it right now.
That's okay.
This is the danger of driving with the window open.
Yeah, that can happen. Dano always has the same problem, so it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal.
Looking good, Elliotte.
Thanks, Elliotte.
Take care, guys. Speak to you later.